As we move forward, as diplomats try and find perhaps a way to salvage this, how much diplomatic attention might be paid to issues like that in restructuring any ceasefire arrangement?
I think they're going to have to really start from the beginning. Interesting you mentioned the statement from Uruguay, because the Latin American countries, we've seen quite a few of them actually pull out their ambassadors from Tel Aviv and pull them back to their national capitals. So this is being, the effects of what's going on here is being viewed all over the world. But as you say, Sammy, yes, perhaps there now needs to be a different approach. The mediators in this from the start have been the US and the UN. We saw unprecedented effort, really, with Ban Ki-moon here in the region, John Kerry here in the region, visiting all the capitals, not just here immediately, but in the wider region and all of those that have leverage. And they were the people who came up with this ceasefire plan. Now, I think there'll be a lot of attention of whether the actual details of the plan, you heard Kristen talking about it there, were right, and whether the wording was right, and whether it was deliberately left ambiguous, and maybe that is the problem that has emerged here. But I think there's also going to be, as you suggested, calls for a completely different approach to this. There are talks of other possible components. We know that in the talks that took place last weekend in Paris, John Kerry was hosting those talks, but we know that one of the other participants, the UK, I'm told from diplomatic sources, raised the idea of the international community getting involved, raised the idea of international monitors. One diplomat that I spoke to at the Security Council in New York said maybe there is even a role for peacekeepers in this. So I think there are other ideas that will now be floated. This ceasefire, as we've said, was a US and UN idea. There is also the possibility, another possible route, rather than this ceasefire route and the Cairo route, there is also the route of the UN Security Council and some sort of a Security Council resolution to end this. That's certainly what some Arab countries would like. They've been floating texts of a resolution, and I'm told there are some in the Israeli Foreign Ministry who believe that could be a possible way out of the situation, because where we are right now really is a pretty desperate situation. That 72-hour pause has failed, has completely collapsed, and we're staring in the face military escalation. Perhaps worth quoting the comments made a short time ago by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's been on the phone to Secretary Kerry, and he said Hamas and the other terrorist organisations in the Gaza Strip will bear the consequences of their actions.
James, I should point out, while you were talking a minute ago, we were looking at pictures which were coming from Al-Aqsa TV, one of the local Gaza TV stations affiliated with Hamas, showing what appears to be some sort of confrontation still at that point, which was going on, targeting what appears to have been perhaps Israeli armoured vehicles or tanks or something of that nature. And that really underscores the idea that you are mentioning. Who on earth would want to put their international monitors and their troops in the middle of that right now?
No, absolutely. And I think it's also worth remembering, Sammy, that this is not just one crisis that the world has to deal with. The world is dealing with an unprecedented series of crises right now. John Kerry, who's constantly dealing with this, is also constantly looking at the situation in Ukraine. And while we're all focusing on Gaza, you've got to not forget how the death toll continues to rise every single day in Iraq and in Syria.
All right, thanks so much. Our senior diplomatic editor, James Bays, there.